in custody on sexual battery, capital sexual battery charges. Ed, this is horrific.
Another horrific child murder with sexual assault attached to it. And I'm just sick of this stuff. I'm sick of it.
She's way too calm and showing zero emotion. Like, I know if this is Janine, my wife, he wouldn't even be able to talk, first of all. Like, it just doesn't seem like there's any urgency.
You know who we need on this case, right?
Oh, yeah.
Dr. G.
Definitely. Dr. G explains.
Seem very emotional right now. Explain to us.
I dropped her off.
So that big sigh before he's saying he dropped her off. We tend to do that as a way to relieve stress. We need to take in more oxygen when we're feeling stressed out, so that big breath out can oftentimes be a way to try to calm ourselves down. So he's just trying to calm himself down, talking about what happened that day. Just wanted to point that out as we keep going.
What were the conversations that y'all had in the car when you dropped her off?
Not much. She was asleep for most of the way. Told her have a good day at school when she got out. I love her. She said, thanks. Love you too. That was it.
That's the cover story. She was asleep instead of being dead.
He responded vaguely to this. What kind of conversations did you have? He didn't say. He said she was asleep most of the way. He's avoiding providing specific details.
What were the conversations that y'all had in the car when you dropped her off?
Not much. She was asleep for most of the way.
So, not much. She was asleep for most of the way. Rather than giving any detail at all about the conversations they had, he just says not much.
Told her have a good day at school when she got out. I love her. She said, thanks. Love you too. That was it.
What was the last thing, I guess, the conversation that you two had, you and your daughter?
We spoke about her birthday party. She had a birthday party on Sunday. She had a great time. I couldn't make it because I was working.
Oh, she was working.
But
Okay.
she had an amazing time. She was so happy with all her...
Now, she hadn't been found yet.
She's 13
No.
years old. Yeah.
13, Madeline?
Yeah.
Just please be nice to her. Bring her home if you.
So for a second, it seems like he was tempted to try to plead to the camera, but lost his nerve. This only lasted for a split second when he started this, but rather than acting as though he's actually talking to somebody, it's like he starts it but then doesn't commit. Now, you may have noticed that you're hearing some sounds related to crying, like sniffing and a wavering voice, but we haven't seen a single tear. And I always think that that's worth noting. Crying with no tears always stands out to me. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody has to cry because they're upset, but if you're doing all the things related to crying, wiping your eyes, sniffing your nose, speaking with a wavering voice, then you tend to assume you're going to see at least one or two tears. We have not seen any yet.
We have the arrest affidavit when he was arrested. Barbaric pedophile. This arrest affidavit is gross. It's grotesque.
Today, he was transferred here from the Orange County Jail over to Osceola County because this is now a murder investigation being led by Kissimmee Police.
Oh yeah, we still don't know how or why Maddie Soto was killed, but we do know this. Investigators are convinced that her mom's boyfriend, Stephan Sterns, was responsible.
It's hard not to blame myself.
What has the conversation been with Jen since?
She's been very.
And after he said, it's hard not to blame myself, there was a big sigh afterward. It seemed like there was some relief after getting that piece out before going on to the next. So you'll notice he does have a tendency to let out big sighs sometimes.
Her mother's planning her baby girl's funeral.
Savage. I'm gonna hold back, but this is a vile human being. This guy should not even breathe the air that we breathe. The science does not lie. The evidence in this case.
I think anybody watching this probably already knows what I'm about to say, which is that his performance when it came to the crying and when it came to having to stop himself for a second, we still haven't seen a single tear despite the crying or the sounds that go along with crying.
When they see this.
She's a sweetheart.
So I'm not so sure. I'm getting some weird vibes from that interview with the mom. She didn't really show any emotion at all, but she did say, we brought her to school that morning. And that to me, that just sets off, my red flags and my alarms. But
She hasn't been active on social media.
Now you'll notice right now his arm is a bit out. His posture is taking up more space. He doesn't comfortably have his hands in his lap. He's sitting in a position that you might consider dominant. Think about a police officer standing, hands on hips, taking up more space. That is seen as a powerful dominant stance. When we sit and we put our arm up or we try to take up more space in some way, that is oftentimes deemed a dominant stance. So right here, As he's sitting with his arm out a bit, this could be seen as trying to take up more space, trying to seem a bit dominant at that moment.
None of her chats, none of her games. We did contact all her friends. None of them had seen her Monday.
I know the investigators, if they're making statements to the press that she's not a suspect, that doesn't mean that she's not. It just means that they want to keep her calm and they want to just keep her on ice.
You could also interpret his presence at all as being somewhat aggressive. Why sit behind somebody? Why not join for the interview? Why not talk about it ahead of time? The fact that he's hovering, for what purpose? Is he trying to listen in? Is he trying to make sure that what's being said is the way that he's thinking about it? It's hard to say, but the whole situation, the whole dynamic, the whole positioning of everybody, very peculiar throughout this whole interview.
But there is also a possibility that she's not a suspect and that she was just, point for me. What I care about is the facts of the case, what crime, the crime that was perpetrated against this poor little girl, and the perpetrator gets successfully prosecuted. Ed, your thoughts?
I don't want to say my actual thoughts, but karma is a bitch, and he is going to get his.
She never made it to school after that. It's right next to the school. I don't know why she didn't make it. I don't know if something happened on her walk along the way or if she got...
So you'll notice as she's describing what happened, as she's saying, I don't know what happened, I don't know if something happened along the way, he is getting kind of fidgety. Watch this right here.
I don't know why she didn't make it. I don't know if something happened on her walk along the way or if she got taken, but she never made it. Yes. I went to pick her up after school.
She was happy that we were all together here, and she was just very happy. She was a happy kid. She's very sweet. She's a very sweet girl.
She was very sweet.
Brings a lot of joy to us, and we just not knowing.
Again, Jennifer Soto gave an interview with her boyfriend, and then a short time after that, that was when he was arrested. He handed his phone over to investigators, and he told...
And she wasn't there.
What an incredibly strange time to start cracking your knuckles during an interview. When she is talking about Madeline missing, trying to retrace the steps of what could have happened, he's sitting there, popping his fingers, popping his knuckles. Now, one thing I do want you to keep in mind, doing that can be seen as aggressive. Cracking one's knuckles can be seen as aggressive. It's also a way that we can relieve tension, but more than that, it can be seen as an aggressive act. So it's interesting that as she's talking about this, his reaction is not one of fear or anxiety, but it seems to be one of aggression.
Was the last anyone seen of her or heard from her?
Yes. I went to pick her up after school, and she wasn't there.
This is Wednesday evening.
I'm just lost. I've seen this time and time again. It's the girlfriend's boyfriend doing it to the child, living together, pedophilia, okay? And he recorded it, and he tried to delete it by resetting his phone to factory specs, but they were able to pull it out.
Because not only is this guy in custody and is alleged with sexual assault, now we're looking at murder. He videotaped on his phone, on his own cellular device, sexual acts with this young girl. It's just a case that makes my heart sink because so many things went wrong here.